People are coming in. That's very good. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Hi and welcome. Thanks for joining us. We will get started in just a minute. As you know, today we're talking about the Plant Physiology Assistant Features Editors Program. And I have with me two current assistant features editors, Aida Merich and Jiawen Chen. Both are in their second year of the program. And we will be joined by the editor-in-chief, Yundi Zhao, at some point, we believe. I'm going to start off with just a few slides to introduce the program, but mostly this is for you to have a chance to ask questions. So you should see there's a Q&A box. Feel free to type questions in there. And we will be reading those and answering them as we see them. There's also a chat box, but we won't necessarily be able to monitor that if there's a lot of questions going on. I am recording this, so if you're not here live, welcome to the recording. So briefly, we started the Plant Physiology Assistant Features Editors Program in 2018. So I guess it's kind of 6 years now. And we've had 113 people serve as AFEs for plant physiology. I will note that Plant Cell, our sister journal, also has an Assistant Features Editors Program, and they're very similar. You may know people who've been working on the AFE program for Plant Cell. Most of our assistant features editors are postdocs, although we do have a few late-stage PhD students, and that's one of the questions we get a lot. There's reasons for that, which is we want people who have enough experience in the research environment, in the writing and publishing environment, that they're ready to do the job. Feel free to apply if you're not at that stage, but I do want to let you know that we prioritize people in that career position. The assistant features editors, as the name suggests, are members of the editorial board, and their role on the board is to serve as writers for the News and Views articles, which highlight recent articles in the journal. One thing that I think is a great perk of the program is that the assistant features editors are invited to join the editorial board meeting. And we had a wonderful meeting just in June of this year in Honolulu, Hawaii. And this is a picture of mostly assistant features editors with a couple members of the editorial board as well. And we spent a day, talking about journal policies and also talking about, what do you do as a postdoc when you're looking for a job here or there, and how do you build your skills? So it's a fantastic, really wonderful program. It's, I think, one of the best things we do at ASPB and with the journal. Let's see. Unfortunately, I have this Zoom bar right in front of my title. So, okay, I'm just going to make up what it says. Oh, yeah. So besides writing news and views, we have a couple other things that AFEs can do. We host webinars when we have a focus issues, and we invite assistant features editors to support the webinar program by helping us to host it. And we also have a project where they write profiles of other editors on the journal. So there's just a couple other things that AFEs do. But their main job is to write news and views articles. And generally, an AFE will write 3 or 4 per year. We're pretty flexible. We want people to write about topics they're comfortable with. It's essentially an unpaid position. There is a small honorarium of about $400. But, if you divide it by the hourly rate, it's really an honorarium, not a salary. The AFEs select which papers they want to write on, and we don't have any rigorous line. We need X number per issue. The numbers go up and down just depending on what everybody's schedule is like. The current crop of AFEs, we have 34 assistant features editors, and you can see about half of them are based in Europe. Another big number, 9, are in the United States. We only have 1 in the Southern Hemisphere, in Argentina, and we have 4 in Asia. We would really like to increase the geographic diversity of the AFE pools. So, because we have articles and authors from across the globe, we would like to see a greater, representation of other countries in the globe in our pool. So that's helpful for you to know, especially if you're not in Europe or the United States, please apply. I'll just show you the pictures of the 2 cohorts. So I didn't mention it yet, but it's a 2-year program. So we have 19 who are in their second year, like Aida and Jiawen. And they will be rotating. Oh, Yundi, you're here. How did you guys see Yundi? I don't see him. Do you see him? Okay, maybe he's just not showing up on my screen. Where are you, Yundi? Yundi, I can, did you join using your special link? Hold on, I will get you. No, you're not. You didn't join using your special link. Okay. I'm going to allow you to talk. There you are. Hi, Yundi. I think you can talk now.
Hello, I don't know. I could see you guys, but had a little bit trouble to get on. So anyway, so I don't see my picture. I think
No, you are not a panelist. So I sent you a special email link just when
okay,
we started.
okay,
If you go into
okay,
your mail and join using that, then you'll show up.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
I'll do that. Okay,
If
thank
not,
you.
if worse comes to worse, come back and raise your hand again.
Okay, okay.
Thanks for coming. See you. All right. Thanks, everybody. So we have, as I said, 19 who will be rotating off at the end of this year. And so we want to replace 19 people starting in 2025, January 2025, and they will stay on through 2025 and 2026. And then we have another group that started this year. And this is 15 people who are in their first year of the 2-year program. So we want to recruit another 15 who will then be starting in 2026 and staying on through 2027. So we're actually looking to recruit 34 assistant features editors to form 2 cohorts. And you might say, why not just recruit those to start in 2026 next year? And the answer is because Plant Cell has a similar program, we've agreed to alternate. So this is our year to recruit 2 cohorts. Next year is Plant Cell's year to recruit 2 cohorts. So if you really have your heart set on the Plant Cell, this is not your year. There you are. Next year will be your year. So this is Plant Phys year. Next year is Plant Cell year. We invite you to tell us if you have a preference for starting in 2025 or 2026 when you apply. And we expect that anyone who's still currently a PhD student, we will probably ask to start in 2026, just to give you that extra year. Hi, Yindi. 2 more quick slides. I think this is a fantastic program, and we've got a couple people who will tell you in their own words. I think one of the best things you get is you get mentored writing support, and you have to be a pretty decent scientist and writer to get in. But I really see that with the very specific editing and conversations people are getting about their writing, that I see a big improvement in how they're writing. And I can tell you that this kind of writing is perfect for writing grants because you're writing to a broader audience than just the people in your field. And I think this is a great part of the program as you clearly become a better writer. It's also a lot of fun. I mean, we're a great group of people. You learn about this. It looks good on your CV. So again, it's a great program. I showed you the picture from Honolulu. We will have another in-person editorial board meeting in 2026. And everyone appointed in 2025 and 2026 will be invited to join us in person at that editorial board meeting. We also have Zoom editorial board meetings. And as a member of the editorial board, you're invited to join those as well. They're not quite as much fun as the in-person meeting, but we do business. So the last slide is really, I mean, this is a fantastic program for your CV. You build skills, it looks good, and we've had about 80 people leave the program, people who finished their term and moved on, and almost half of them are some sort of principal investigator. And we have people, in the United States, Brazil, UK, China, Australia. And I know for a fact that this program has helped them with their careers. About 25 are still postdocs, but then we have people who've moved into other positions. We have 9 who are in some sort of permanent academic staff position, as in a grants office, a core facility. We have several people who've moved into sort of permanent positions in proteomics and genomics. We have people at the USDA and doing teaching. We have 8 doing various types of industry jobs. And interestingly, 2 of our former AFEs are now professional editors, one with Science Magazine or Journal, I guess, and one with Communications Biology. And I know, again, that the experience they had with this AFE program was helpful to them in getting that position. So sorry, I do have 2 more slides. If you don't have it handy, the QR code will take you to the page with all the information about the application. You've got about 8 weeks before the application is due. Please don't turn it in late. We have a really hard deadline on end of the day, October 15th, 2024. And if it comes in on October 15th, 16th, it won't be considered. So don't delay too long. Get it in on time. Everything you need to know is on that blog post. And I just want to highlight a few points before we open it up to questions. We want you to submit it in a certain way. This just helps us deal with our record keeping. And we ask you for a cover letter. And I want to let you know that the cover letter is very important. We're not just looking for, here's my application, thanks. We want your cover letter to give us some information about you, your hopes, your dreams, your goals, your background, what you think your strengths are, what you hope to get out of the program. So we want to read your cover letter and get to know a little bit about you. We look for a CV. We're pretty, happy. Whatever format you want to give it to us in is fine. We do ask that you submit a first authored paper. We can talk about that in a little more detail. The purpose of that really is to kind of help establish the fact that our applicant pool have the experience that we feel they need in order to be an assistant features editor. So they've done some research, they've gone through the publishing process. Somebody asked, is it okay if it's a review article? Yeah, absolutely. You've done the work. You've gone through the process. That's great. We will ask you for contact information for 2 referees, but you don't need to ask them to send us letters. We only solicit references from people who are shortlisted. So, that saves everybody a lot of work. And then finally, the most important thing in your application is you're going to write and send us a sample news and views articles. We've got a list of, I think, 10 articles that you can choose from. Pick the one, presumably, that you feel the most confident in your ability to highlight. Look at old news and views from the journal and see kind of what we're looking for. But we'll elaborate a bit on this during the question period. But we're looking for something that kind of highlights, why is this an interesting paper? What are the strategies the authors use to investigate their question? What are their key findings? And what comes next? And our audience for the news and views is everybody who reads plant physiology. So that means someone who's an expert in proteomics or small molecules should be able to read an ecophysiology news and views and vice versa, because we are a very broad audience. So you're not writing for the authors and the 10 people in the field, you're writing for plant biologists more broadly. So we're looking for, your ability to write the kinds of articles that we are publishing in this series. And now I'm going to stop sharing my slide and open the floor. Yundi, welcome.
Thank you. So I just went to the journal link, but then that's why I could not get in. So Mary, I saw quite a number of questions already on the QA.
Okay.
We can start from there.
All right. Let's start with Aida and GON introducing themselves first real quick so everyone knows who they are.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I'm Aida. As Mary said, I'm in my 2nd year of the program, and I can really tell you that there's a big difference in the way I read and how I write papers now. And yeah, you get a lot of support, a lot of mentoring, and definitely it's a very important part of my career development now.
Jawin, and I'm also in the 2nd year of the AFE program, and I agree with what Aida said. It's a really nice program, and I think for your skills in reading and writing, but also just after the meeting this year in Honolulu, getting to know the other AFEs in terms of networking, it's also really valuable.
Excellent. So would somebody like to, let's see, we've got, I guess the first real question is there a restriction on post-PhD experience? How about if you take that one, Yundi? That's a policy question.
Yeah, I don't think we have any restriction. I guess the question is how many years of the post-PhD experience, right? So we don't have any restriction on that. So we even for senior PhD students, we consider them too. So no restrictions.
So the next question is, sorry, 2 questions down, is really about career stage. And I would like to address that one. We do prioritize PhD students and postdocs. And I actually wrote this in an email to someone recently. we consider this a great career building opportunity. And if you're already in a tenure track position, we kind of feel like you don't need it as much as some postdocs who are still looking. That said, we do read your cover letters really carefully. And you may be in an assistant professor position where you really need some networking opportunities or some mentoring of some sort. So if you can convince us that you will get as much as a postdoc who's still looking for their job, right? That's your opportunity to tell us that. So we have had, and we currently have, assistant professors who we've brought in for various reasons, but it's generally in the smaller numbers. But again, we're very receptive to hearing why you feel like this program would help you. And then I'll just take the next one. So we really don't want someone to be an assistant features editor for both of our journals because these are very limited in number of positions. And you can, if you apply for Plant Phys and you don't get it, feel free to apply for Plant Cell. If you applied for Plant Cell last year or Plant Phys and didn't get it, feel free to apply again. But once you're in, like Aida and Jiwen, sorry, but you won't get accepted into the Plant Cell program next year. You've had it. We've got a great program here. All right, now there's a few more questions. Who wants to take one?
Maybe Jiwen and me can, answer the mentoring question.
Great.
Yeah, I can quickly comment on that. So it all starts with really you have to understand that the support that you get is, I didn't expect it, to be honest, because it starts with a process of selecting the paper. Even if you select a paper and then you read it and then you realize, okay, this is not something that I would like to highlight. Maybe I don't like the way they explain things, or I don't really understand the paper in the end, you can really change it, and there's no problem about that. And then once you put in your manuscript, Mary and Yunde and Mike, and we have one more new, yes, exactly. One more editor. They really comment on, like, you go sentence by sentence, and everything that doesn't seem to make sense to them, and all the comments that they would give to a general review that goes to a paper they give to your news and views paper, which can sometimes be difficult. And you have to realize that you do make mistakes, we're all humans, but it really, really helps a lot because you realize how general public will view your your manuscript, because some things that are clear to you might not be clear to everybody. So when you have another set of eyes on that is so experienced, it helps a lot.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's also kind of what you want to make of it as well in terms of the amount of mentoring. So if you want to discuss something a bit more, you can always email the person that's been editing your article and ask them about questions that you have, but you don't have to, or it's not a given that you will get like an official form of mentoring, but it's just kind of what you want to get out of it. Maybe in combination with the question on if there's one person or input from other AFEs, we could combine it with this question, because you can write one by yourself or you can write it with another AFE. I'm just in the process of that at the moment. I can't remember, Ida, if you've already done that, but I guess that's also one form of mentoring with your peers.
Yeah. And that's a really nice experience. Because they pay attention to stuff that you wouldn't never pay attention, maybe you don't remember to pay attention to. And and maybe we could also highlight the fact that you can always, in any moment during the writing process, you can contact the editors, but you can also contact the corresponding editors that were in charge of this manuscript while it was in the process of the revision. So you can ask them directly, why did you accept the paper? What do you think the authors meant by this? Again, we go back to the fact that it's a lot of networking and it's really useful.
Yeah, if I could follow up a little bit as well. We do have this pretty formal process where the news and views is submitted. I assign it to one of the 4 news and views editors, and then we each have our own style of how we give feedback. But on top of that, I do a lot of maybe sort of informal network mentoring with the AFEs. I'm often asked to talk to people about, career progression. Sometimes somebody says, I'm applying for this program. Would you look at my cover letter and my application material? So I spend a lot of time helping people move into their next position. I write reference letters for people who, feel like I'd be a useful reference. And sometimes people just say, hey, I don't even know if I belong in plants, I need somebody to talk to. So I talk to people who get stuck and I kind of encourage them. Yeah, it's really hard. It is extremely hard to be a scientist and don't get discouraged, keep going. So, I think I stay in touch. I think I definitely stay in touch with all 113 former AFEs. And I'm very happy to continue to support them in any way I can.
Yeah, I would add more on this. Mary mentioned we have 4 editors work with AFEs. We have different styles, so you will learn different aspects of writing. This will be really interesting to AFEs because in the future you submit articles to different journals, and then you will have different experience and different kind of emphasis on articles. So. I just wish when I was at the early stage of my career, there are such program. So you'll benefit a lot. Yeah. So there's a question about the course, a co-contributor or first to first author papers. That's fine, if it's like a course, that's okay. Review papers are okay too.
Yep. Yep. So let's see. I think there was another one, a question farther down about how do we select the papers? And so I'll address that one. Each week, I get a list of the papers that were accepted at the journal in the past week. And our wonderful peer review manager, Ash Wolf, dumps them into a Google Sheet. And he puts the title, the corresponding author, and then I look at the manuscripts. There's usually sort of 8 to 12 each week that are accepted. I go through and I take a quick look at the reviews of the newly accepted papers, and I make sure there's nothing that's really like sort of, maybe this isn't a paper for us to highlight. But other than that, the AFEs essentially get to look at all of the newly accepted papers. We give them the title, the corresponding author, and the abstract. And then they have up to the following Monday to sign up. And, if somebody says, hey, I really want to write on this, they're almost guaranteed to get that paper. But sometimes in our Google Sheet, like 2 people will both want to write on it. And usually they're happy to co-write. So it's very transparent. Once the following Monday rolls around, Ash sends off the full completed manuscript to whoever signed up. And sometimes people say, that's not at all what I expected. Can I skip this one? Sure, no problem. We're so flexible. We are so flexible. We really just, we want good articles. And if you feel like it's not, something you want to write on, don't write on it. That's not a problem. We're really just very nice. And then we give you about 2.5 weeks to turn in your news and views. And again, if you have questions, if any issues, we communicate constantly. And then, as I said, one of the 4 AFE editors will edit it. And generally, what most of us do is we don't go back and read the original article in detail because we want to be like a reader who hasn't read the article, who wants to see, how does this read to me as someone who doesn't know what the article actually says? So we read through it, and if there's terms in it that are unfamiliar or methods that are maybe only described by acronym, something like that, we kind of flag these things and say, that won't be familiar to somebody. It's not familiar, right? Sometimes people go into way too much detail, and the paper is 1 click away, so you don't need to go through and they use this control and that negative control and da, 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 da. We want the kind of highlights, but we also edit for grammar. I think that most of our AFEs are not native English speakers. That doesn't mean that they're not good writers. It doesn't mean they're not good scientists, but we have the ability to kind of fix a few, words that are maybe not used in a way that's standard, that kind of stuff. So we do some of that as well. Yeah, that's probably all I have to say about that. If you guys want to add anything.
Yeah, there are questions.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go on.
Yeah, about as the AFE, how often do we meet, and yeah, what are the key duties? So your key duty is to write the news and views. Yeah, 4 times a year, I guess, is more or less the rule of thumb, but it can be more, can be less. You get an award from Hyundai during the meeting if you write a lot. And then, yeah, we unfortunately, we don't have official meetings other than that as AFEs, but we do have a WhatsApp group now since Hawaii. So that's nice. We stay in contact.
So how competitive is the position? I think we had about 125 applicants last year, and we appointed 15. So it's pretty competitive. Yeah, if you're going to apply, do a good job. Write that cover letter, let us know who you are, get other people's feedback on your news and views that you're going to submit. I think that is really important. If you're a little uncertain about your writing skills, get people to read it for you and give you comments and revise it, because that is the most important thing we look for. And again, if the grammar isn't 100% perfect, that's fine. But what we want is that your ability to synthesize the big picture, pull the big picture out, tell a broader audience, like, why is this interesting? What did they do? Why should we care? So protists, we have all sorts of photosynthetic organisms. I don't know if your protists are photosynthetic, but we have a lot of biotic interactions. But, we have people, again, Plant Physiology is a very broad journal, and we have people who are working on, plant microbe interactions, plant insect interactions. It doesn't matter if your, main research is on a fungus or something, as long as you do some plant research. And many of the people who are sort of on the edges are very tool focused. So we have bioinformaticians and proteomics people who aren't restricted to plants. So, if you look at an issue of Plant Physiology and a lot of the articles look interesting to you, I think then that's good enough. We won't penalize you for working on protists.
Yeah, Plant Physiology, we publish all the research in any field related to plant biology. So that should not be a restriction to you.
Maybe the question regarding how do we select references from the literature. So it's kind of up to you. So, but what I think what a lot of us find quite helpful is when you read like the introduction or the discussion of the article itself, you can kind of get some good ideas of where to look for references. So I think that's always a good starting point. And then sometimes when you do a bit of a search yourself, you might find other articles that are not in the original article that you're highlighting. So it's kind of free and up to you. And regarding providing your own critical views and suggest additional work, I think the advice we got at the beginning was to not necessarily, it wouldn't necessarily be helpful to point out all the things that you think are not good enough because they have already been accepted in Plant Physiology. If you don't like it, like Mary said, you can choose to not highlight it anymore. But sometimes it is nice to just provide a bit of context or where you think this could lead in the future in that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and most AFEs, when they're starting, they will pick papers that are close to their own expertise, right? And that makes it's a little easier because, like, oh yeah, I know the auxin field, I can write about this. Whereas, like, don't even ask me to think about, these plant microbe interactions. But often in their second year, they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to try something different, and they're branching out and doing more things, and that can be really great. And as I said, if you ever start teaching, you're going to find that you have to develop expertise way beyond your research area. So it's good practice to start, branching out a little more as a postdoc. You need, Gaida, go on.
Yeah, there's a question about figures for the news and views. And I think that's super important, not just for your application, but in general to make your message more clear. It would be very important to include it, especially when you're applying for the program. Think about the figure. I wouldn't say it's as important, but it's very important to put the message through properly. And don't think, okay, this is just an application. I don't need invest in time in this news and views during your application, and preferably make a figure there already, because it can highlight your strengths, that maybe you are a great graphic designer in addition to plant scientist, but highlight this. I would say include it.
I think it's actually a really nice part of being an AFE as well, as you get practice in making figures, and I think that's quite valuable too.
Yeah, absolutely. I love a good summary figure. Let's see. Just looking to see what we haven't covered.
Mary, there's a question about the cohort 2026. I think maybe you can clarify that this code is for both years. Yeah,
absolutely. So it's one application, and we're going to roughly split the successful candidates into 2025 start date. And some people, we will say, we want you to join us, but you have to wait until the start of 2026. So next year, Plant Physiology will not be recruiting. Plant Cell will be recruiting. Okay, so like I said, we're alternating years. So we are going to bring in people who will start either in 25 or 26. And if you have a preference, let us know. Otherwise, we'll generally take the people who are earlier in their career and ask them to wait a year, and the people who are more senior and give them the first start time. I can't find it right now, but somebody had a question about quotas, and we absolutely don't have quotas. And another thing I want to mention is that this is a lot of work. So I want you to, for me, I want you to recognize how important it is to us. When your application comes in, I extract your news and views, put it in a separate document, and give it a number. And the people who read these and score them don't have any idea who you are, what gender, what ethnic background, what country you live in, who your PI is that you're working with, or anything. So we really are reading your news and views without any prejudice, positive or negative, right? It's just looking at the writing. And so we take a score for the news and views, we take a score for the rest of the application, which obviously we can't anonymize you in that way. And we're looking for really, maturity, but not too much maturity, capabilities as a scientist. You've done the work, you've got your PhD, you're doing a great postdoc, you've published, you have the intellectual maturity to really be able to do a good job. And then we combine those scores and we rank them. And then we have a discussion. And there's usually, 5 people who were like, oh, they're amazing. And then there's a bunch where we're kind of discussing pros and cons. And it's not until the very end where we're kind of thinking about things like, we could really use somebody in the Southern Hemisphere, let's bring this one in. But 90% of what we're focused on is, you as a scientist, you as a writer, you as an intellectual, I should say, right? And in the past, we haven't had too many PhD students, but again, because we're recruiting for 2026, we definitely expect that we will have late stage PhD students getting accepted for 2026. This will be new this year. We haven't done it this way in the past. You can certainly modify the figure, and I think, as someone said, it's kind of fun to create a figure. One of the things we've sometimes had people do, which is if there's not a summary figure in the paper and you want to make one because it makes it helpful, you can create one. And sometimes people say, is it okay if I send this to the author and ask if it makes sense? And absolutely, if you want to send something to the author for their feedback, feel free. We don't require it. We don't think it's usually necessary because we've, selected the best people. But if you're making a summary figure, that's probably a case where it's a good idea to just run it past them and say, is this what you're thinking? Right? Otherwise, you may misconstrue what they've done. But you can also just pick paper from you don't have to be a graphic designer. You can just pick a figure. And in that case, it can be informational, but sometimes it's just like eye candy, right? We put these things on Twitter, we put them on the blog, and a nice figure, it attracts people's attention. Oh, here's another good one. Yes, we do consider different subfields. That's part of our master spreadsheet. The other thing we do is when we give you 10 papers to choose from, like half of you will write on 3 papers that are, gene function type stuff, because that's it's a very important approach, and it's a very widely used approach. So we kind of see this Gaussian distribution of people's interest, right? There's fewer people working, in photosynthesis, fewer people working in plant-insect interactions. We want to get those edges included because we do publish in those fields, but a lot of you will be writing on, the same 3 papers. And truthfully, you probably have less chance if you're doing that because, we read all of the ones who wrote on this paper together in a group. And so we're ranking them against each other to some extent, even if we don't intend to. It's sort of psychological. Whereas if we only get one person writing on one paper, that if it's a decent job, they're probably going to get in. So that's something to bear in mind when you're selecting the paper. But we have 34 people. We've pretty much got things covered. So we're not going to say, oh, no, we've already got a biochemist. We've got a couple people. I think 2 or 3 years ago, we had several people working on light signaling at the same time. But that was great. They did a lot of co-writing. They made a little cohort. They got to know each other. So it's less important than it might be on an editorial board, right? All right. How are we doing? What have we not said, panel?
Maybe about the option that you can write about an editor.
Oh.
Yeah. So a couple of months ago, you can do an editor profile where you basically do an interview with an already established editor in the Plant Physiology journal. So this is another chance for you to network and get to know an expert in your field more closely, and you to have more access because they will be definitely more responsive to you as an AFE as compared to if you randomly send them an email asking, okay, tell me about your life. So I did this a couple of months ago and it was really nice. I interviewed a professor from England and it was a really nice experience. You can learn, yeah, you don't learn just about science, but you learn about their academic path itself, and you get some advice that could help you too.
A related aspect is that you're invited to the editorial board meeting. You will see how these policies of the journal are discussed, and sometimes some aspects like you might not even think about it, and but a lot of behind the scenes. I think this is especially important for the career development, right? Later on, you submit papers, and then you know the journal. So I think the AFEs really enjoy that part of the editorial board meeting too. So
I tried to put in a link, but my computer is extremely slow when it's running this Zoom. But anyway, if you go to the website, you'll find the editor profiles. I don't know if you can paste it in, but my computer would not let me do this right now. Yeah, and some people just better at emailing people on the editorial board, right? You know, and again, we give you the corresponding author, but also the editor who handled the manuscript. And you can certainly, as someone mentioned, you can write to them and say, I think this is something that's really important to highlight. Do you agree with me, right? Because they've handled the paper, they've read it, they read all the reviews, they're very well versed in what's in the paper and why they accepted it. So, and again, it's, if you, it's not required, but if you want to do it, you're certainly welcome to. And, editors, the regular editors love the AFEs because they're like, this is so great. I wish they'd had this when I was a postdoc. Preprints are fine. That is absolutely fine. You've done the work, you've written the paper, it's under review somewhere. So, yep, that's okay. It's a 2-year program. If you want to leave early, great. We actually had someone do a 1-year break in between the two. Obviously, we don't want people doing that all the time or we'll just have chaos. But somebody was like, you know what? I'm going to do some personal things for a year. Can I come back and do my 2nd year? Yeah, sure. But generally, it's a 2-year program. But if you need to leave early, that's fine. No problem. We are flexible, right? What's the next step after getting shortlisted? Oh, great. We will contact the referees. And, I would say 99 times out of 100, we get the PI who you've listed as your referee saying, oh, brilliant. That would be so good for them. They would be wonderful, right? But every now and then, we actually had one referee listed someone that looked interesting who had never heard of the person. So, don't do that. Yeah. So once you're shortlisted, you're pretty much going to be in as long as you haven't lied to us.
Yeah. So I also want to mention that we trying to get AFEs to be involved in reviewing papers too. So you will get more chance to review the paper submitted to Plant Physiology than the ordinary postdoc because your name is already in the system. So we have one click that you can look at the match with the AFEs. So
yeah. Yeah, we're still working on getting that foolproof, but that's our goal is that when editors are looking for reviewers, the AFEs will come up, as people. And I don't know if that's happened to you guys. I think maybe I saw one of you as a reviewer on a paper recently. Is that right? I don't remember.
I've reviewed for Plant Phys before. I'm not 100% sure if it's because I'm doing the AFE thing or not, but I thought maybe it was because of that. So
I think definitely is because of that. So
okay.
What about the expected time to complete an article? Well, I guess we said 2.5 weeks, but maybe the question for you two is how many hours do you think you put into each news and views? That would be a great question to answer.
That's a important thing. Don't leave it for the last day. You will, if you want to do it properly, ideally you would read it today, sleep on it, and then start writing maybe in 2 days or the day after. And depends on how good of a job or how quick of a reader you are. I'm not sure. But for me, usually it takes 2 full days.
Yeah, for me, I actually spend a lot of time usually reading up on the background as well, because it's not always something a topic I'm familiar with. So I think maybe I even spend longer on the reading than on the actual writing part of it.
Well, that's brilliant because we never have enough time to read, right? So, you're kind of forcing yourself to educate yourself beyond your field, which is probably why all these people become PIs, right? Because they're doing all this extra work. Good work. Good for you work. Let's see. Any more questions, folks? Let's see. I think we answered no. If you've already been a plant cell AFE, we wouldn't really consider you. We have too many good candidates, so we need to spread the love around. Referees' comments. Yeah. Let's see. Referees' comment. So I'm going to answer that in 2 different ways. The people who we want to appoint, we do ask them to give us names of people we can follow up with and just, say, like, is this a real human being? Or would they do a good job? But that raises another point, which is one of the things we send the AFEs is the reports that the reviewers submit to the editor about the paper. And the names of the reviewers aren't on it. We respect the confidentiality of the reviewers, but the AFEs see in the first submission, the reviewer said you really need to get more than one, knockout gene or, knockout of this gene to make it sensible. And then the next report, they say, that's great, thanks, you answered my question. So they both see in detail these kind of reviewer-author interactions, but it also highlights many times reviewers will say, wow, I'm so excited because this is like the best thing ever. I'm really can't wait to see this paper out. And that's so helpful if you're trying to think of like, what is the most important thing about this paper? If the reviewer is saying, nobody's ever looked at that before, this is cool, that helps you a lot. And then other times they'll be like, 90% of the paper is great, but I don't believe that Western blot. So maybe you don't like spend too much time talking about that Western blot. So anyway, I don't know which of the questions you were asking, but I just wanted to make a point that there's one more piece of information the AFEs get to help them. So the shortlist is more or less our almost list. So we expect that we will be appointing 34 people this year, almost 19 or whatever. I can't remember which is which, 19 and 15. We'll probably have, I think we probably usually have 2 or 3 extra just in case we lose anybody. Or in some cases, people will offer someone the position and they'll say, no, something came up and they can't do it. So we'll probably have less than 40 people kind of on our short list that then we'll be following up with.
So Mary, this question about the like AFE in other journals other than Plant Cell and Plant Phase. I don't know if other journals have that.
I know Plant Journal has a few. Honestly, I think that probably I wouldn't say no, right? Because it's really Plant Cell, Plant Phys. These are the positions that we can control. But if someone's already had experience doing something similar, they're probably pretty good.
Yeah.
I think we've addressed the most important qualities. And again, I will just reiterate the ability to summarize the big ideas to a broad audience. Occasionally we'll get applications where if I look at the abstract of the news of the article they're highlighting and I look at the news and views, they've essentially just moved a few words around from the abstract. And we're not looking for an abstract. We're looking for something that's more big picture, has more background than an abstract. So, you could throw in something about, the proportion of rice growing areas that are now contaminated with seawater. I mean, you can kind of bring in these global issues and stuff to engage your readers. So that kind of thing, the ability to communicate molecular science, molecular plant science, in an interesting way, without hyperbole, without kind of, going off the rails, but make it interesting, make it engaging. Anybody else? What do you think are the most important? Where'd the question go? The important traits in your experience.
Oh, you need to be a decent writer, right? So the writing has, the news and reviews article you submit has to make sense, right? So to be logic. Because this is writing, this job is mainly you write news and reviews articles. So if you don't know how to write logically, then you will have a difficult time. So
that's an interesting question. I mean, I always tell people, feel free to get people to read your submission. If you know any of the current AFEs and you want them to read your application, go for it. Yeah. I don't know if they're going to be willing to read it for a complete stranger, but if you're even one step removed, like, hey, I got my PhD in your department. You don't know me, but would you help me? Yeah, so I don't think we've come. I have told a few people, I can't read your sample news and views and give you feedback on it. That's not okay. But, you know, as far as I'm concerned, anybody who's willing to help you would be great. And then again, we don't really consider geography until the very end when we're just trying to see, like, you know, do we have any gaps, right? But mostly the rankings come from the news and views sample article, and then the kind of big picture we get from you from your cover letter and your CV. You know, and your publication record. Obviously, as a postdoc, we don't expect you to have 10 Nature papers, but it would be great if you had a good first author paper, right? That gives us confidence in you. So when an AFE transitions to an independent PI, they still remain an active AFE member. We do notice that sometimes their productivity drops off because the most difficult time of your life is your first year as an active PI, but we don't kick you off, right? Once we accept you, you know, you're here for the duration, and we're very happy if you get a PI position, right? It's one of the things we hope for. Anybody have any last thoughts? We're down to our last 9 minutes.
I would just maybe point out that I think it always shows whether you're excited about what you're writing or not. Like, try to find an article now that you're applying, try to find an article that you really want to write about and that you're excited about. Maybe it's not your field, but something you want to learn about, and show that in a way that you just don't rewrite the paper itself, but you show broader perspective and maybe preferably include the figure. And this is what's gonna show the reviewers that you're the candidate to. You have the right qualities. Like, be excited about it and find a way to transmit that.
I put the link to the blog post in there again. It's very important that you pick one of those papers and highlight it. Actually, a couple people last year sent us just a random news and views, not on one of our articles, but read the description of what we want. And if there's any questions, email me and I will answer it. But, you know, do read it carefully. I think that was great advice. Yeah. Like I said, the most important thing is the writing sample you give us. Oh, I also want to mention ChatGPT. It's a very controversial subject. We don't want you to use it for writing your cover letter or your news and views. As I said, your cover letter should tell us who you are, not who ChatGPT thinks you are. GPT. It's not BTP, it's GPT. Right? Be yourself, right? And you know, if you want it to kind of help you polish, whatever, I don't care about that. But don't say write a cover letter for this position, because literally we got 6 almost identical cover letters because clearly somebody said, put in the link, write me a cover letter, right? Like, I want to be a plant physiology AFE. Please write it yourself.
I think we have that in the instructions, right? So it's explicitly said, don't use AI writing your sample news and views articles and the cover letter. Yep. So we can see it, you know, because if you use last year, I think we had a few obvious that's AI generated. So
yeah. So we do score the news and views out of 10, and then the rest of the application out of 10. So, you know, the most you can get is 20 points. And then, like I said, you know, we have a few 19s, few 18s, 17s, 15s, and then we do the ranking that way. And then, as I said, you know, the 4 of us who run this program get together, you know, with this shared spreadsheet, and kind of discuss, like, and I think it's extremely fair. I mean, I don't think we could do it any way that was more equitable, especially since half of your sample, we have no idea who it is. We're really just looking at, you know, the ideas that are presented to us and how they're presented. Okay. Any final thoughts? Should everyone apply? Oh, I guess I missed this one. 7 or 8 years of a postdoc. Yeah. Again, the cover letter should, tell us, like, give us a little background. Is there a reason why, what are you doing? Are you going to stay a postdoc? Are you looking for positions? Is there a, personal reason why maybe you're kind of stuck? Maybe, and again, if you want to tell us how this program could help you, like what would you do with this opportunity? I think that helps. We're really not looking for, the people who are shooting to the very top of the academic ladder, although we love having some of those people, but we also see this program as a service to the community. And so, if it will benefit you, tell us how about that, and that will help. Okay.
Definitely apply. I really enjoy being an AFE, and I'm super happy to have met Joanne and everybody else in Hawaii. That was a super, super nice. And I really recommend it to everybody I see and to everybody who is attending the webinar. Apply and yeah, do the best that you can because it's worth it.
Yeah,
I agree with all
so
of that.
yeah. So once you're in the program, you're in the big, community, so you get to interact with all the editors, you join the editorial board meeting, you talk to your fellow FEs. It's a great step to help your career advancements. So
Yeah. Yeah, we actually recently made a LinkedIn group for current and former AFEs, and so far nobody's done anything in it, but we did pull them all together in one space. So what they do with it is up to them. All right. Well, thank you all. I really appreciate the time you took to come here. We look forward to reading your applications. If you have further questions, you can email me. I'm mwilliams@aspb.org. And as I said, the deadline is the 15th of October. We won't look at things that come in on the 16th. We're going to work really hard and make sure we get the acceptances out, by the end of November, right, Yundi? It's a lot of work for us, but we want to make sure that everybody knows before the end of the year. And we reply to people whether or not they're successful, right? Again, that's part of like being a good community. We're not going to just leave you hanging. If you're not successful, I hate writing those emails, but it's better than leaving you hanging, right? Thanks. Thanks, Yundi. Thanks, Yuan. Thanks, Aida. Good to see you again.
Mary, this webinar you will post on YouTube, right? This today's session. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Great. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.